You're listening to Refracted World with Terry Geo, Episode 10, The End of Money. We are so hyper-focused on the negatives that we rarely allow ourselves to think positively about the future, or indeed our future. AI has been a massive talking point in recent years, and the very real, very possible future where AI takes all of our jobs. And it likely will. But what if that could be the best thing ever to happen to humanity? Imagine living in a world without money. How would it function? How would we eat? Where would we live? How could society function without money? It seems totally impossible, right? So if I told you that a world without money could happen in the next 30 years, within most of our lifetimes, you'd think I was mad. I'd think I was mad. But that future is already being created and has been for decades. Think back to your childhood. Depending on how old you are, that will look very different for all of us. For me personally, I was born into a world without the internet, without mobile phones, and without personal computers. 40 years later, we live in a fantasy world compared to the 80s. We're all connected online. We walk around with mobile computers in our pockets. Medicine allows us to live longer. We have telescopes that can see back to the creation of the universe, and we have 3D printers that can make anything we want seemingly from thin air. And it's 3D printers I want you to concentrate on. Because what if we could push that technology even further? What if we invented a device that was just like a 3D printer, but could make anything simply using the air around it, water, and dirt? Because what is dirt but particles of all matter? And once you've created the first one, that same machine can make another, and another, until every person on the planet has a device of their own. What would that mean for the human race? Running on renewable energy, we wouldn't need money, so we wouldn't need to work. We wouldn't need to trade, as everyone could make anything at the touch of a button. And we could live anywhere we chose. But this isn't just science fiction. Star Trek have had replicators in their shows for years, but there's no way we could create such a device. Yet this device has been in the planning stages since the 1980s. When Richard Feynman first proposed the idea, we have gotten closer and closer to its existence. Scientists predict nanofabricators will be around in the next 3 decades. I first learned about this from watching Connections on CuriosityStream. It's a fantastically informative series. You can also find a wealth of information online about nanofabricators and how close to realization they are. But rather than delve into the science, I wanted to explore the, at least for now, science fiction. What happens after every human being has this device in their hands? What happens to us personally, as a species, and as a society? Once you have the power to create anything at all whenever you want, what would you do? There would be no more starvation or droughts, as food and water could be made at the touch of a button. Anything could be made at the touch of a button. It would be as if a genie popped out of a lamp and did grant you unlimited wishes. So everything from this point on is a thought exercise. We don't know the future, but we can use current knowledge to imagine what could happen. I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on this too. Let's begin. The year is 2055, and it's taken a few years, but now the nanofabricator has been rolled out to every person on the planet. You unpack your box and stare at it. Now what? What would you make first? You start small, you're hungry, so let's see what a chicken sandwich tastes like. Seconds later, it's in your mouth, and it's exactly the way you wanted it to taste. It's not real chicken, it's synthesized, and yet it tastes exactly like the chicken you remember. Okay, what next? Cocktail, done. It tastes exactly the way you'd want your sex on the beach to taste. Now a TV. Oh wait. Yes, you could have a TV if you wanted, but what are you going to watch? If everyone has a nanofabricator and no one needs to work, no one would be working, and there would be no TV channels. So let's start with the television. TV as we know it will be gone. We can already see the decline in this happening today. Streaming services and social media videos far exceed terrestrial television, so in 30 years' time, I doubt there'll be a demand for any of it. In a world with nanofabricators, TV will likely be created by AI and the rest will be made by us. Think TikTok and YouTube videos but on a much grander scale. When you can make anything, sets, lighting, edit suites, AI actors, special effects, you can do it all. The only cost to you is time. And time is what you'll then have a lot of. For a while, I'll expect we'll live in the same house and just keep adding to it, maybe changing the layout. Ooh, let's add this. Ooh, what about that? But in time, we'll realise we don't need to stay in our cramped one-bedroom apartment in an overcrowded city. We don't even need to live in the city. We can live anywhere. We can make transportation. We can live anywhere on the planet and make a house. So why don't we? You want sunshine? Build a vehicle, travel across the country, and build a house on the beach. Want something completely different? Why not build an underwater dome or a skyship or Elsa's ice palace in the Arctic? I am a champion for equality, and this would be the ultimate equaliser. Of course, the future isn't set in stone, and the proverbial spanner I can see thrown into the works would come from the people who this would negatively affect: the rich and the powerful. If you're the president of a country, or a billionaire, or a business-owning capitalist, why would you want to give that up? You wouldn't, and you may fight to stay in your position. And unfortunately, those are the people who would be in charge of handing out the nanofabricators to begin with. I can imagine very lively debates behind closed doors, with the rich and powerful not wanting to give up their stature. But in this scenario, to save time, they have all relented, and now we have the nanofabricators in front of us. But then, what happens to governments? I'm sure the current structure of power would stay in place for a very short time, but in a world where money is meaningless and no one needs to work, why should politicians? Law enforcement would also cease, and perhaps this would cause crime to skyrocket, but I believe only in the short term. Or maybe it wouldn't at all. When we have everything we could ever want, why would anyone commit crime? And even then, we could create robot security guards to guard our property and ourselves. I expect this period of transition to be a rocky one. When Willy Wonka gave the chocolate factory to Charlie, we don't exactly know what that transition was. And what happens to the boy that gets everything they ever wanted? They live happily ever after? Maybe. But in the short term, I think it would cause a lot of friction with a lot of people. And I cannot see the transition being an easy one. There will be many people who don't like the change and will likely fight against it. There will be a rise of crime and security measures to prevent them. There will be an entire generation of older people who may not understand the technology, and with no one manning prisons or caring for the ill, managing these people will be down to us as individuals. How do we do that? That's something we would have to address pretty urgently. So, let's fast forward 10 years to 2065. By now, many people will have found somewhere to call a new home. A place on the seafront, a small community in the forest, a floating island. The possibilities are truly endless. Crime now is virtually non-existent. The ill and infirm are cared for by their families or technology, and everyone is living a life free of responsibilities. But with that could create a lot of boredom. We all complain about having to work most of our lives, but when you're not working at all, what do you do? For creative types like me, I could spend all of my days writing or painting, but half the joy of my work is someone seeing or hearing or admiring it. If I'm writing novels, what's the point if no one ever reads them? I think around this time, a decade after the end of money, we will start to rejoin as pockets of society, maybe only small, like a couple of hundred. Not because we have to, but because we want to. Human beings are social creatures, and whereas the idea of total isolation sounds nice for some, it isn't the way most of us want to spend out our existence. But where there are communities, there will always be a need for law enforcement. We don't all share the same values. We don't all share the same views. And when you put a mix of people together, not everyone will get along. Even so, I believe this will be the true beginning of a brand new human civilization. 2080. 15 years later, there are still millions of people happily living in isolation. But there are now billions living in small and medium-sized communities all across the globe. With the help of a brand new form of internet, keeping everyone connected via their nanofabricators, we could have holographic representations of anyone in the world chatting to us in real time. Not just that, we could have holographic historical figures as well. Want to see Shakespeare read by Shakespeare? There is still no monetary incentive to work, yet millions of people do. Law enforcement, community-led governments, hospital carers for those needing the softness technology can't provide, and a new type of schooling. We are already very lucky to have the entirety of human knowledge at our fingertips. Go into Google, type in anything, and it will come with the answers. But with nanofabricators, this can be brought to life in new and extraordinary ways, making learning so much easier and so much more fun. And when anyone of any age has all of their free time to learn, the education of the human race will vastly improve. The year 2155. It has been 100 years after the advent of the nanofabricator, and planet Earth is merely one of many places humans now call home. The lunar base houses millions on the moon, and shuttles frequently fly to and from our rocky satellite. Mars was occupied next, with small bases on Saturn's moon Titan and Jupiter's moon Europa in an underwater base. Earth has also gone through some major changes, with continents connected now by super-fast rail tunnels, natural disaster alerts and protection protocols are in place, and the protection of all living things is something every human wants to preserve. With talk of a Dyson sphere to harness the entire energy of our sun on the horizon, we are on our way to becoming a Type 2 civilization. Human beings are not perfect. We never have been, and I doubt we ever will be. But without the need to work, without the need for money, without the starvation and drought and the need for housing, we have every single second of every day to spend on doing whatever we want. Greed would no longer exist. Crime would be virtually wiped out. Diseases could be a thing of the past with new medicines being created. Our life expectancies would grow and we could reach for the stars. Literally. Nanofabricators are coming and could be here as soon as 2050. These are just some of my thoughts and ramblings on what could happen in a good version, but there are many variables, many difficulties we could face. It could start a war unlike any we've seen before, or it could be the first time human civilization comes together and creates a true, brighter future that lasts for billions of years. I would love to hear your thoughts as well. I link all of these podcasts to all of my socials, so please leave a comment on what you think would happen. Are you excited for this technology? How badly do you want one in your hands? What would you make first? Or maybe you think it would be a terrible thing for the human race. Do you think we'd all succumb to boredom and just die out? As always, thank you for listening to my podcast. I'm really enjoying doing this every week, and I'm loving hearing your feedback, so thank you. As always, thanks for listening, and I hope you join me again next week. Until then, take care and goodbye.